Today we're going to revisit the Odroid H4. What we have here is an Odroid H4 basic model. This basic model has no SATA ports and is driven entirely by the M2 slot on the back of the board. All of the H4 series and the H3 and the H2 have a M2 slot on the back where you can plug in your SSD, with on the H4 a single slot or a DIMM memory module. While the H4 basic model has no SATA ports, you're limited by this single M2 SSD slot. What we're going to look at today is a new expansion brought out for all of the H4 and H3 series, and for this particular model it gives a significant expansion. If we open our Odroid box, we'll see we have a number of little packages. We're going to look first of all at this package here. If we open it up, we will see we have a new circuit board. This is a new circuit board, and as you can see it has two M2 slots upon the board. This is to allow you to expand your single M2 slot into two M2 slots. If we open up the back of the board, and we can remove the SSD that's currently sitting in here. Now that we've removed those standoffs, we can now plug in the new expansion board. Now that we have this new board in place, we can see that this side of the board plugs into the existing M2 slot and now gives you two slots. And as you can see, we now have double the capacity in our basic H4 Odroid. However, this does come at a cost. The original M2 slot has 4 PCI lanes supplying data to it. Once we have this expansion plugged in, we are splitting the PCI lanes between two separate M2 SSDs. Therefore, each of these SSDs will have in theory half the maximum speed of the original card. However, this does give you a way of expanding our basic Odroid H4 by giving it an additional drive. So this gives you a new option. However, it goes further than that. There is also a 4 card. And if we put this to a side for the moment, we can open up our 4 card model. So here we have a model with 4 M2 slots. Again, this splits the data channels to this board into 4. So each M2 has obviously a much reduced data supply, having 1 PCI lane for each M2 card. If we unplug that, we can now plug in the new card. However, this now gives us a basic H4 Odroid, which has no SATA ports, but they now can support up to 4 SSDs using the M2 slot on the back. Of course, the speed to each of these drives is reduced down to a quarter of the original bandwidth, but considering the limited cost of these boards, it does give you an easy way of expanding a basic H4 Odroid, from having a single SSD to having 4. You do have the downside of a reduced bandwidth to the cards, but this is a small price to pay for additional storage, as in theory you could purchase very large SSDs to plug into these M2 slots. However, in order to support these additional cards, we need to reflash the BIOS, as there is a special BIOS for the H4 boards to support these new cards. So I'm going to split this video into 2 parts. This first part is explaining the boards themselves and what we can do with them. The second part will be reflashing the BIOS, step-by-step guide, and testing out the performance of new cards in these boards. However, hopefully you will agree this is an interesting expansion to the Odroid boards, and for me was something that was quite unexpected. One interesting note on Hardkernel's website is that you don't necessarily have to use these M2 slots for just SSDs. You can use them to expand your Odroid in other ways. However, we'll explore these ideas in the next video. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.